Have you heard the term imposter syndrome? I think you have. That's a popular one. But have you heard the term um, social role cage? No, I think you haven't because I've just made it up. Uh, Let me explain what I mean by all of that. Those are two most critical things that stop us from going into the new levels of our life. Let's try to explore. I think you pretty much familiar with the term imposter syndrome. There's something that happens within yourself. This is your self-sabotage. You telling yourself that you're not fit for this role, that you're not good enough for that position, for that promotion, for that raise. That's something that's happening inside of your head. That's something that you yourself are telling to yourself. And social role cage is something different. Something when people tell you how to be, when people give you feedback on what they expect from your character, from your behavior, from how you operate in life, how you move, how you talk, stuff like that. So it is others, they tell you. So we're not only comparing it, right? We also try to figure out how to overcome it. And these two things, they are connected. And how are they connected? We can see a common word here. We can see you, and by you, I mean myself as well, an actor of this entire process. The first person in this equation is you, if I talk to you, or is myself, if I'm talking about myself. So the dynamics looks like that. Whenever I enter a new social group, people read me. People read how I move. People read how I talk, how I behave, how I allow to treat myself, how I allow to behave, to act towards myself, and how I respond. People read that, and people try to simplify things because the world is a complicated place. It is very multifaceted and it has lots of things to analyze, to process. That's why we as people, we tend to simplify and categorize all of the things. So we already have, depending on the age we're in, we already have certain categories for people, certain boxes in our brain that we put people into, because we then develop a simplified way to interact with that particular category. We know what to expect from that category of people, and we know how to interact with that category of people without the need to process lots of information. And that causes one effect. When I join a social group, they tend to predefine me. They tend to assign me some kind of a role. They do it by just judging by simple actions, maybe, or maybe by my appearances. Maybe I look like someone else who has already been categorized by them, and they try to interact, to test whether I respond to the same model of behavior, model of interaction, just for them to confirm that I belong to that category. And that's just natural process. We all do it. We all simplify things. We try to categorize events, categorize people. But when it comes to people, it then can serve as a limitation. Limitation to ourselves in interaction with other people, and limitation to those people as well. So when I join a social group and they assign me a role, give me some characteristics. Oh, I know that guy, he is a quiet one. And then they feedback. Through time, they just keep feeding it back to me, the way they expect me to behave, the way they expect me to be. And that's kind of a cage. That's kind of a social role cage. I know that in a certain group of people, it is less comfortable for me to be open and funny than in another group of people. For example, back when I was a student, my class already knew me, and they perceived myself as a certain category of a person. So they knew certain things about me, and when I wanted to express, I understood my social role, my social cage. Within that cage, I was comfortable enough to express myself, and going beyond the boundaries of that cage was a bit uncomfortable. And the thing is that I also participated in other groups, and I joined different other events where there were other people, where those cages, those limitations, they were not existing for me. And it was interesting to notice that even sometimes when I joined another group where I could express myself, where I felt comfortable to be funnier, to be more talkative, and less restrained, and after communicating, after interacting inside of that group, when I went back to things I'm used to, I felt that attitude was still going on, and it was sometimes met with certain resistance. I just noticed that people could be surprised that I'm funny today. Why are you talking so much? What happened? They definitely knew that something has happened, and that's actually was an action of breaking the cage, or getting outside of the cage, of the social role cage. I have some doubts about imposter syndrome. I think actually imposter syndrome originates from social role cage. Through years, we just go with our social roles. We go from school, from preschool, then to school, then some people go to university, then you go to your workplace, maybe you change workplaces several times. And each time you bring on social role baggage. You remember all of the social roles you played before. You know how you're treated inside of your family circle. You know how you're treated by your peers. You know how you're treated maybe when you play basketball with the guys, right? You see the feedback from people. People share that feedback with you through actions, through the looks, through the reactions on your explorations. And layer by layer, those roles, they accumulate in our brain. And then when we go into different circumstances in life, into different social groups, we bring those memories, those habits, those dynamics that we have about our social position, we bring it with ourselves to the new place. We leave one working place, we go to another one, and we bring it all along. And then nobody there tells us those things anymore, but we keep telling it to ourselves. So the imposter syndrome might actually originate from that experience, from that baggage that we carry. Imposter syndrome is actually an unescaped social role cage. If I carry the baggage of all of social roles I played in my life, I was assigned those roles by other people, and if I carry those memories, if I carry those habits, then even if nobody else is telling me what to do, I'm telling myself what to do, how to behave, how to move, how to talk, what a character I am. But the first question we need to ask is what role I want to play. And we're starting on the first person as well. So you starting from you, I start from myself. So I need to ask that question to myself. What role I want to play? What are my values? What are my principles? And how to express those through actions, through words, how I want to place myself in a particular social group. The easiest way to alter your reality, to escape the social role cage, is around the times when there is some change in your life. For example, when you join a new group of people, when you maybe join language courses, maybe when you change your job and then you join the new social group of your coworkers. This is the easiest way because you have a blank page of the context. People don't know anything about you. They just read you through your appearances, through how you behave, how you respond to their hello. Do you smile back or do you frown? So you can actually own that moment. You can own that precious initial impression, and you can actually help people to define the role that you like. Because if you don't do that, people will find some category for you and will assign it to you. And then through their feedback, through time, you will understand that and you will just slowly blend into that role. It's a bit trickier when the social group is already established. It's a bit trickier when you want to achieve the change in your social role, or maybe when you want to escape the social role cage within already established social group where you've been for several years already and people know you, people know your place, people have already assigned all necessary roles and characteristics to you. They just expect you to behave and to treat them in a certain way. They expect certain things from you and they don't expect certain things from you as well. And you want to escape that. It requires consistency. You need to actually, through your actions and through your words, through your attitude, you need to redefine yourself. You need to be consistent within the new definition of yourself. That's a bit more tricky than joining the new social group. So that actually requires overcoming the resistance. It all starts with self-definition. When I redefine myself, I started acting differently. I started even talking differently. I started expressing myself differently and starting being more creative, and people were not used to that. And obviously that resulted in a bit of a resistance. Some people resist with just a frown on their face. That's it. The surprise that you see on their face. You expect more resistance, but you actually, in practice, you get less. And if you get a lot of resistance from certain people, probably those people, they have something more going on than just resisting your new definition. Initially, when I start to act in a redefined way and I start to act differently, people try to test whether it is a true change or just a wave, and maybe just a temporal thing and it will just go away. Consistency is key here. Whenever I stayed consistent with my principles, with my self-definition, whenever I stayed consistent, in a very short time, people understood that this is the change in myself, not something that I play, not something that I impose, but that's the real change. Maybe I thought something through, right? I was a student, maybe I thought something through. Maybe I just learned something new. Maybe I met someone and maybe people shared some thoughts with me, shared some ideas. Maybe I understood something and it changed me. People do change. But for people to understand that this is something real, they need time. They need time and repetition. They need to see that this new behavior persists. This new way of talking, this new way of behaving, acting, that persists. That's actually the only thing that works. That's the only thing that works. Consistency in expressing yourself. In order to escape the imposter syndrome, we need to ask the question, what role I want to play? If we go deeper, we will not go deeper into details in this video, but if we go deeper, then I can tell you that want is also connected to the word can, because then we need to do the reality check, and also will, right? Those three words: want, can, and will. This is the beginning, the starting point, but kind of going backwards, because how I arrived at a situation having the imposter syndrome. I arrived from some point, right? So I need to go backwards, and it really seems like going backwards. You ask yourself this question: what role I want to play? But actually then you go backwards. So in order to play that role, what I need to do, how I need to behave, how I need to act, right? So what are my actions, behavior? What are my words, or what are my moves? What are my values? Especially around words, behavior, and actions, and moves, yes, because values actually go into all of those, right? They just the foundation of those. This is kind of a next step as well, right? We need to go backward a bit more. So what role I want to play? When I answer that question, in order to make it happen, I need to figure out actions which are attributed to that role, behavior attributed to that role, words, moves attributed to that role, and values of that role. And that is the key of it all, is definition. It is self-definition. I need to self-define. In ideal world, this is the step one. This is actually the starting point. You self-define, then you start acting in a certain way because you already know your definition. You start behaving in a certain way, you start speaking the words and doing the moves and expressing the values and all of the things that you do in your life and your interaction with people. You just express your definition of yourself, and that leads to a certain role that you take in a social group. People see your values through your actions, through your behavior, through your words. They tend to assign role that's more fit to you because of that. And then naturally you're not feeling imposter anymore, because you feel like people know my role. Maybe they categorize me, maybe they simplify me, but they put me in the correct category, and then I can be myself in that category. So you don't have imposter syndrome, you escape, or maybe you never enter a social role cage. But that's an ideal world. It never happens in reality. In real life, it never happens. We all go through that vicious circle. We all need to go through those steps back. We need to go backwards. So we need to figure out the role. We need to figure out what that role is attributed to, which actions, behavior, words, moves characterize that role, and then how I self-define. Let me give you the workout plan for self-definition. So self-definition is a complicated thing, yeah, but it's very important. It's very important. Actually, this is the starting point of all of the necessary changes, including financial changes, including your work changes, your personal life changes. All of the changes start here. I think it can be done in many ways, but the way that worked for me, and still working for me, is like that. So, first, reality check. Let's honestly answer the question: am I happy with the role I'm playing right now? Maybe roles. There are usually several social groups that we interact with, and they tend to assign several roles. So, yeah, am I happy with those roles? That's an important question to ask. What are those roles? Then let's see the limitations attributed to those roles. What I mean by limitations, this is one of the key things here, limitations. Why I was not happy with some of the roles? Because they actually limited me in discovery of the new things that I wanted to try. The expectations of a certain social behavior can be a limitation. For example, if a social group thinks that I'm a very serious person, I never smile, I'm very serious, and then I want to be funny, maybe I want to do a stand-up show. That is impossible for that role. That's something that I need to break that role in order to actually do the trick, to actually do what I want to do. And this is just an example, so such kind of limitations, just do the reality check and list the limitations of the roles that you play. This is the reality, right? Then let's call it goal or dream. Where you want to go, what you want to be, right? What role you want to play. What is your dream? Let's rephrase the question and ask that question to ourselves. Describe in as many details as possible the ideal role you would like to play in your life. Describe different characteristics of that role. Describe different aspects of that role. Then check the limitations. Here, limitations will be not only of that role that you want to play, because then it can be just self-imposed limitations. Like you're in a dream, but you're dreaming that you cannot do something, right? You just need to be poor always, right? You don't do self-imposed limitations. Here, check the objective limitations. Limitations of objective reality. That's important to understand, because actually that is not something that's imposed on you by yourself or by other people in the social group, but it's something that helps you understand how to navigate reality. Yes, you can dream of a role of a Superman, right? But objective reality says that it's impossible to fly without a plane. Spider-Man? Maybe, but Superman? Probably not, right? So this is kind of another level of reality check, but for the good purpose. Not only to understand the limitations that are imposed on you by other people or imposed on you by yourself, but first understand the limitations of the real world. For example, I have some limitations that you don't have. Maybe geographical, political limitations, legal limitations, different things. We live in different countries, so we have different limitations. Even the limitations of the origin, right? The language we speak, the language we think, that sometimes it can be limitations for certain roles. So we need to check objective limitations. And here, an important thing is to actually compare the limitations of the roles imposed on us and limitations of the objective reality, and figure out the limitations that have been imposed on us on top or above of the limitations of objective reality. That is a very motivating thing. When you see that list, when you just see a list of limitations of objective reality on one side and a list of limitations that have been imposed on you or by other people or by yourself, then you just feel lots of motivation to change your role, because you discover lots of limitations that shouldn't be there. You don't want those limitations to exist, but they exist through the roles, through the social roles. So this is a very motivating point here. Difference between limitations. We figure out the difference of limitations and we figure out the fake limitations. So it's very important to have a list fake limitations. Even though life itself and objective reality imposes lots of limitations on us, I take on some more which are fake, which are coming from some social play, some social roles. And then I don't want those limitations. It motivates me for a change. It motivates me to change the role. Once I identify the fake limitations, the list of fake limitations, I'm very much motivated to overcome them, to change the role that I play so that I don't have those limitations no more. That actually brings me to figuring out when I want to do it, right? When I want to change, when I want to play a new role, then because I'm motivated to play the new role, I need to figure out how that role behaves, how that role speaks, what are the characteristics of those roles that I want to play. This is the definition: role characteristics, my behavior, my actions, words, reactions, how I move, how I respond, do I smile or not, and things like that. So it all boils down to the definition of the role. It's very important to know who I want to be. And it all boils down to the values and principles of that role. So it's kind of a definition, right? But it's like definition basis. It's not just definition of the top layer. It's the foundation of my self-definition. It is my values, my beliefs, my principles. So it's something fundamental. That's the core of my self-definition. And from that core, we arrive at how I behave, how I act, how I move, how I talk, how I react, how I interact with people, how I treat people, how I allow other people to treat myself, how I react to difficulties, how I react to the things that I'm glad with. It all boils down to self-definition. So there you have it. A very simple explanation, I think. A very simple explanation of a very complex. Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's not simple. I just wanted to share my thoughts because I truly believe that without self-definition, without starting, maybe going backwards a bit and starting from the beginning of defining your values, your beliefs, your core principles, without that, everything else in terms of personal growth, in terms of financial growth, in terms of any kind of personal change is just a waste of time. If you start somewhere else, not from the beginning, then eventually you will find out that you need to go backwards several steps and go to the roots and start with self-definition. I encourage you to spend some time with yourself and define yourself. Think about your values, think about your beliefs, and then go from that, the level up and up and up. Think about your actions, think about your behavior, how that role transposes to the real actions, and is that role that you want to play in your life corresponds to the role that has been assigned to you by yourself or by other people? Are you happy with the roles you play in your life? And will you be happy with the role you want to play? So be careful. Maybe you need several iterations of revisiting your self-definition. And actually, like maybe it's me, but I'm not sure if it is the same for everyone, but for me, it's just constant process. You just constantly self-reflect. And when I say you, I mean me. Yeah. So I constantly self-reflect. I just constantly think about my values, my beliefs. I think that's it. That's everything I wanted to share. Let's have another look. Let's remind ourselves about the social role cage that, in my opinion, causes imposter syndrome, and how to get rid of it, how to go backwards to the roots, to the beginning, and start the self-definition process to overcome all of those things. So yeah, there you have it. Thank you very much for joining me today. I wish you best of luck and I wish you to become happier and happier every day through overcoming the imposter syndrome and through escaping the social role cage.